Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Any discussion on any process inevitably and appropriately must end with some evaluation. After all, everything must have some purpose, some goal directed activity, and when you conclude it, there must be some feedback on whether the goal was achieved or not. Following the same logic, looking at issues of organization management, the fifth aspect on which this can be concluded is a discussion on organizational evaluation. After you have understood organizations, after you have seen how it works, after you have looked at the design issues, the structure issues, the process issues, the environmental factors, the cultural factors, you name it, we finally arrive at the discussion on organizational evaluation and try to see for ourselves how is it that you you evaluate an organization. Evaluation in fact is a part of the planning process itself. The day you start an activity, evaluation should be inbuilt into that. Evaluation therefore is not a one-time event or a one-time process, it is a way of life. There is a difference between evaluation and appraisal. The difference is evaluation is a feedback. It will be a feedback with reference to the quality of the effort, the impact of the effort, and to see whether there were any gaps. This becomes a feedback to the various stakeholders to plug the gaps and to raise the level of performance where it is required. That is it. And it should begin simultaneously with the beginning itself. Obviously, the nature and structure of evaluation evolves and grows as the activity rolls on. The kind of evaluation which you will do on the first day is not the kind of evaluation you will do on the 15th day, and yet it will be a different type of evaluation on the 30th day. When you do the first evaluation, it is always benchmarked against zero knowledge. When you do the third evaluation, it is always benchmarked at the point of evolution that the first evaluation left it. Therefore, everything after the first evaluation is benchmarked against the status achieved at the end of the preceding evaluation. So, the second evaluation must draw upon the benchmarks of the first evaluation. The third evaluation must depend upon the benchmark of the fourth evaluation. An n number of evaluations put together complete the process and you have a total evaluation. Of course, the concluding evaluation is the summation. The simple thing to understand is evaluation is in any situation a continuous process. It is a feedback to all the stakeholders, as I was just telling you, and how to improve their performance. It is also used to check if plans are on course. Very many times a lot of activity is undertaken without a reference to the plans. Why with reference to the plans, even without reference to the goals? So, if you are not goal directed and if your activity is not as per plan, why are you undertaking it? It is purposeless. Be that as it may, the assessment is in terms of shape, direction, and I might add intensity. Intensity of the effort, and that is the quality dimension. It is the process of checking how far predetermined objectives have been achieved, and it is the comparison of actually achieved outcomes against the desired targets. So, in all cases, evaluation is standard minus actual. S minus A is the evaluation process, which leads us to the second major conclusion for this kind of a discussion. You cannot have evaluation unless you have clearly established desired standards of performance. So, actually speaking, evaluation begins long before it actually begins. It begins the day you wish to evaluate, and from then on you start asking yourself, what would be the standards I would need to follow in evaluating? Not only what are the standards that I would need to put out, what would be the indicators of those standards, and indeed those standards themselves will need to be periodically reviewed. There is no such thing as a standard which is static. Standards compete amongst themselves and organizations grow because that bar is being constantly pushed up. The assessment is in terms of shape, direction and intensity. It is process of checking how far predetermined objectives have been achieved, part of the evaluation process, and its comparison of actually achieved outcome against the desired targets. By what is meant by desired targets is targets which were projected, and in many cases the targets which were being projected are very ambitious targets. The targets which are achieved are real world targets. So, that is again not a gap which is unusual. You may have very often a difference between actually achieved outcomes against desired targets. Then well might you ask, why keep the desired targets high? If you do not keep the desired targets high, the performance goes down even further, because no matter what standard you keep, no matter how diligent is the performance, it will always fall short of the performance level desired. Now, that gap again will need to be bridged at two levels. One, was the target itself so unrealistic that there was no question of achieving it, in which case it should be reviewed. Two, it was ambitious and it could have been achieved, but it would have been difficult to achieve, in which case keeping those targets is a great spur to add intensity to improvement. The evaluation index consists of measurement against predetermined targets, that is evaluation. It is a check for quality of results achieved. You may have to produce 30 cars a day. You have to ask yourself, what is the quality of those cars? Because evaluation cannot be just a number game. there is a very serious qualitative dimension to it. It is assessment of the balanced use of resources, which is why when you have an administrative audit of a unit, and you can have an audit of anything, you can have an energy audit, you can have a manpower audit, you can have an audit of financial processes. Though normally when you talk of audit, people think of financial audit, but audit can be just about anything. Audit is nothing else but a measurement against plan. And then the auditors, no matter what kind of auditors they are, they try to explore where were the processes inaccurate, where did the processes fail to deliver, where did the processes prove themselves to be lax so as to be taken to a ride. So, there is a general tightening, straight casting and deepening of evaluation through this process. Evaluation is also an assessment of the balanced use of resources, because a lot of resources are simply not renewable. Time, for example, is a non-renewable resource. The total sum of sunshine will be constant. All that you have got to understand is, whatever it be, renewable resource, non-renewable resource, resources are not for wasting. And it is the responsibility of the evaluation of the organization to ensure that there is no institutional wastage. It is an analysis of goal resource chain. If you do not understand it, do not worry, we will come back to more of this as we go along, especially in the finance area. Goal resource chain has to do with matching, like a PERT network, where you are and where you want to be, and at each point there is a quality evaluation. They will check your carburetor, they will check your brake, they will check your filter to make sure the car is in a running condition, so that it does not have a breakdown from then on to the next point of review. Therefore, the best way is to look upon evaluation constructively, positively, see it as a feedback to keep you going, see it as a feedback to ensure there are no wastages, and use it as a feedback mechanism above all to understand how to assess the effectiveness of a unit. So, organizational evaluation. Evaluation should be in the context of common framework or reference of people going to be evaluated and people responsible for evaluating. This is important. If the framework of the people who are to be evaluated and the framework of the people who are doing the evaluation do not match, you have trouble at your hands. After all, evaluation is as useful as the person being affected by it. In this context, I find it useful to point out that beyond this, if there is any attempt at evaluation, it is to generate the principles of evaluation themselves, which is also important. Where is the need for evaluation at all? We have seen some factors, but let us look at what some of the others are saying. Organizational evaluation measures, compares, analyzes the coherence between results and specific objectives and general objectives of institutional projects, programs or plans. So, please notice this very carefully. Measures, compares, analyzes, three keywords, the coherence That is the next keyword. Coherence between what? Between results and specific objectives of institutional projects, programs, and between specific objectives. So, the general objectives and the program plans on one hand, and the specific objectives on another hand, and they have to match. That is organizational evaluation. It can be helpful in identifying whether or not the objectives and goals originally established are being achieved. After all, if organization is a group of people brought together for the purposes of achieving a given set of goals, a revision of the goals periodically is a must, because the goals themselves may have been rendered infructuous. Whether or not the objectives and goals originally established are being achieved, as well as their expected effects and impacts. It is like taking a medicine and discovering it does not work, then you shed that medicine, you switch on to another medicine. So, also in audio intervention, you undertake an intervention and you find it does not work, well then you try some other technique. A need of evaluation arises when the organization is adapting to new environments. Changing technology and changes in other external variables, so as to sufficiently utilize the available resources. Now, you see, if an organization is to function properly, it clearly must adapt to the environment. Its technology will change, and so will its other external variables. Therefore, the capacity of the organization to handle these issues must be evaluated. How well does an organization adapt to the new technology? How well does an organization deal with changing technology? These are key organizational issues, areas which need to be improved, modified, or strengthened. After this is said repeatedly, the truth is, whenever you talk of evaluation, people have an awful tendency of producing unreliable data. Different modes to do better, different modes to better fulfill the needs of the clients of the institute. If you are looking at satisfying the clients of the institution you come from, then you would need to have a very sensitive feedback from the clients. The reason, the client is the ultimate arbiter of the fate of your organization, and if the client is the ultimate arbiter of the fate of your organization, well, then it is just as well that you give him priority and not eliminate him at the level of other perceived forces of power. In addition, organizational assessment generates evaluation information, which then becomes a valuable experience based input in future planning, establishing of priorities, and resource allocation. Therefore, you will find that each organization which is well governed will have these traits. You must have experience based inputs in future planning, establishing of priorities, resource allocation, because that is how evaluation will take place. It furnishes financial data to justify the need for additional resources. Most good organizations throw up a trait after evaluation, and that is shortage of finance cannot come in the way. In fact, we live in a world which has generously created artificial shortages of finance. And since it is difficult to do it in a limited way, you transfer money through different channels every once in a while from one center to another center, so that no center has a steady growth, no center has a steady decline, and in the ultimate analysis they win some, they lose some, they stay where they are. It suits immensely the global leaders. There was a surplus of cash available in this country 6 months ago. Today there is a great dearth of capital, there is a huge shortage. And when you are not applying your mind to regulatory processes, and some of it comes through SEBI, some of it comes through RBI, some of this comes through Ministry of Economic Affairs, and God knows wherever else, this kind of funneling effect of policy measures on organizational performance will never be precise. Therefore, organizational evaluation is not an autonomous act. It is dependent upon various other interdependencies, and coming as this topic does after interorganizational dependencies, it should be relatively easy for you to understand the complexity of the organizational process. Evaluation helps to keep the key activities on right track and others inform that other information that allows setting of minimum standards to promote compliance with the organizational research process objectives. Well, one of the fallouts of evaluation is organization must keep growing. But how does the organization keep growing? The organization will keep growing only if you find that it is working towards the objectives. So, every once in a while you have to evaluate the organization to go back to where we began, whether it is going towards the objectives. For that, there are certain prerequisites needed. The prerequisites are proper information flow, proper formatting of that data, proper data aggregation. After you have done that, you are ready to get on with the process of evaluation, and even then you will notice that there are different other approaches which will need to be built into it. Now, this is a schematic diagram which helps to establish the need for evaluation. I will leave it on display for a very limited period of time, then I will get back to explaining it. Now, of these 13 inputs to why one needs to evaluate, the first one is to compare our organization with others like it. Whether we like it or not, we are all constantly comparing to others like ourselves. And again, whether we like it or not, to quote Mark Twain again, because he had such a penchant for identifying life's truths without sounding apologetic, as only he could. And I quote, "There is something about the adversity of our best of friends." Let me repeat that so that you get the sentence. There is something about the adversity of the best of our friends that does not wholly, mark the words, that does not wholly cease, and therefore, there is a double negative, which does not wholly cease to please us. In other words, whenever we find that one of our friends is in some trouble, somewhere inside us we feel happy. If not because he is in trouble, at least with the thought, thank God I am not in trouble. And that is a very pleasurable feeling. Oh, he has cancer. Oh, I don't. I don't. Without realizing you'll be having cancer the day after tomorrow. Oh, he hurt his leg. Oh, thank God, I haven't hurt my leg. Comparison is central human tendency. If you are in love, you want to know, how much do you love me? Now, I have never understood that question ever in my life, which perhaps makes me the kind of person I am. How do I say, how much do I love you? Then I am supposed to say, lots. No, say more. Oh, infinity. Oh, great. Darling, did you understand infinity? No, I didn't, but it felt good. So it rolls on. Tell me, is the cooking good? Yeah, it's good. No, just good? No, very good. No, just very good? No, excellent. Just excellent? No, unearthly, out of this world. Out of this world, you mean to say, I can't do it again? You see, then you are trapped in your own statement. You can't win. So it goes on. I am not here to unscramble all that. Some great scholar on behavioral sciences will be born one day to understand these contradictory traits of human nature. It is for me to explain, comparison is central to life. It does not mean that it is the only thing central to life, but it is a central thing to life, and these are two different things. You are not only comparing to others, you are also comparing to yourself. You look at the mirror and you say, do I have some wrinkles now? No, I don't have wrinkles, even though I am only 85. I didn't have wrinkles when I was 65. Good heavens, you should have had wrinkles when you were 35. Why do you say that? Because of your habits. Your alcohol, your smoking, your dissipation of energies, you should have had wrinkles long ago. In other words, everyone is constantly seeking solace in two sentiments. Thank God I am better off. B, thank God it is not as bad as it could be. That is why you compare. Evaluation, therefore, is a basic instinct of human beings. To criticize our own work. Now, this is a very positive tendency. You criticize your own work, hopefully you will improve. The only trouble is nobody wants to criticize one's own work in public, exceptions notwithstanding. To see where your strength and weaknesses lie, very important. Notwithstanding that, you will agree that not many people undertake SWOT analysis on their persona. But that they do not undertake it does not mean that it should not be undertaken. Evaluation shows what all you need to work on. It helps to generate an action plan. To be able to improve our methods, this is just as important. Remember, we have talked of structure, we have talked of process, we have talked of design. It is time to talk of methods. There are other key words in organization management: style, environment, flow. There can be a whole glossary on organization management, but that is another story. The important thing for our purpose right at the moment is we are looking at the word method. There is a method of doing things. Again, I do not know how many of you have any taste for literature. I strongly feel that any good student of organization management must have a strong taste for literature. In fact, you can't understand systems without understanding literature. There is a statement from Shakespeare's Hamlet. Somebody is commenting upon Hamlet, who was feigning madness to avenge the death of his father. And another person catches up with him, and he says something which is profound for the purposes that we have currently at our hand. He said, there is a method in his madness. He goes mad just at the right moments. And I remember that as a classical statement to explain the word method in organization management. Organization management also survives on a basic way of doing things. How do you agree? How do you disagree? How do you negotiate? How do you deviate? How do you carry people along? How do you flatter? How do you antagonize? How do you open a relationship? And indeed, how do you close a relationship? How far you will experiment? How far you will not experiment? Are you the sort of person who always says no? Or are you the person who says yes all the time? In either case, it's damnable. Ultimately, you go back to one of those key concepts in management, discretion. So, method is the way of the discretion. Evaluation is used to measure progress. Are you moving towards the objectives? Evaluation is to see what has been achieved. Because in all situations there must be takeaways. Organization is to help us see where we are going and if we need to change directions. Very important. Organization helps us to stay on course, to help us to make better plans for the future. All plans need continuous evaluation. All plans need continuous upgradation. All plans continuously need revision. What is the input for that revision? Evaluation. Evaluation is to help us to make better plans for the future, to make our work more effective. If your work is not effective, why are you in it? Evaluation is needed to collect more information. You suddenly realize that you don't have enough information to evaluate. What is it that you are overlooking? To see if our work is costing too much and achieving too little. Evaluation is always often a ratio analysis. What did I put in and what did I get back? A question which everyone asks. Some accept it, some they don't. The classical question, of course, which is asked, what did I get in this relationship? Everyone wants to get something in the relationship. My answer to that question forever is the pleasure of knowing me, sweetheart, the pleasure of knowing me. Oh, is that what I got? But look at all that I gave. I said, oh, you gave it because you had an urge to give, you are fulfilling a need. And that infuriates the other person. But the fact of the matter is, nobody gives without the urge to give. And what do you get in a relationship? If you enter a relationship to get something, why don't you go to exchange a relationship? Life would be easier. Yet, everyone wants a return. A gift always wants a return gift. In fact, I have seen people maintain huge inventories. Who sent us an invitation on their marriage, the marriage in their family, and you keep that inventory for 10 years and then a marriage takes place in your house, then you send the marriage card, invitation card to each one. God, what a huge waste of time. I would have been much happier to say, you invite me if you want to, I will invite you if I want to. But that I don't set the social rules, society sets the social rules. The long and short of it is to collect more information, to see if our work is costing too much and achieving too little, to see if all the effort has been effective. For there is an overall dimension of evaluation, and finally, to be able to share our experiences. And like in everything else, organizational evaluation has certain tools and techniques, and I will be coming to that shortly. There are two types of evaluation. Depending upon the objectives of the evaluation exercise, assessment may focus on one or several of the following. You could focus on economic impact. a very important word in the modern parlance. Everyone is looking at economic growth. Everyone is looking at economic impact. Everyone is looking at the economic dimension. Therefore, the effectiveness of research results do a cost benefit analysis. Then there is an impact evaluation. Impact is measured in relation to long term effects on variables. What change did that effort cause? And if it did not cause a change, why did you undertake that effort? And remember, every effort is resource intensive. In fact, even in communication, a question is being asked today. Why must you communicate? Oh, I communicate because I like to talk. Oh, good. Then why are you sharing information? You never get an answer to that question. You say, then you mean to say I shouldn't tell anyone anything? No, you shouldn't tell anyone anything. Then life is not interesting. Oh, you pepper up your life till somebody uses that very information against you. Because just as comparison is the basic law, so is competitiveness. The long and short of it is that impact evaluation is a very unique type of evaluation, just as there is an economic evaluation. Impact is measured in relation to long term effects on variables, which are sought to be altered through the activities. That is a good definition, I think. Is measured in relation to the long term effect on the variables. So, identify the variables and which are sought to be altered through the activities. For example, in a research organization, impact evaluation would measure the effects of research outputs on transfer of technology and returns to the farmer. One illustration: you consult, how do you measure the impact? Then you have the question of basic evaluation. This covers the identifying and analyzing of social, economic, biological, physical, technical, institutional aspects which can be improved by research activities. You start altering the basis of life. A lot of work in biotechnology is of this variety. A lot of work on creation of new material is on this variety. A lot of work in genomics is of this variety. So, your research in genomics may not create an immediate impact. It may not cause an economic impact which you can measure and codify, but it is a very significant intervention because it has altered the basic assumptions. So, there are three types of evaluation. You can do it by way of an analytical evaluation. An analytical evaluation involves socio-economic analysis of adoption studies, productivity analysis, risk assessment, use of labor, marketing, credit, prices and their effects on technical alternatives. This is an analytical evaluation. The whole purpose is to generate technical alternatives. You have operative evaluation. This measures efficiency by comparative analysis between materials and resources used, activities carried out and results achieved. The measures of efficiency by comparative analysis, for example, is it better to travel personally to deliver a message or try within a radius of 10 kilometers, or to keep trying using your mobile and continuing to get a message, network not available, the subscriber is out of reach. He is not out of reach, but that is the message you get. You get all types of funny sounds, nobody picks up the phone. Then somebody picks up the phone, you can hear him, but he can't hear you. And even after all these hurdles have been crossed, they have devised the wonderful system of what is called call drop. Now, call drop is a major revenue earner, because the first few seconds always yield a larger revenue than the latter part of the conversation. Therefore, a service provider has a vested interest in having larger number of first time calls, because there is a larger revenue. All of this has been carefully worked out. So, the question arises, is it simpler to use the mobile or just to walk across if the distance is of a certain variety? Now, that is an analytical evaluation. Do I gain by doing it this way or doing it the other way? Do I send it through email and get hacked, or should I send it through fax and I am immediately there in print? Because after all, the other joker also does not know how to use an email. He will get his secretary to download it, who will photocopy it, keep a copy, give one to the boss. God, isn't it simpler just to save a mail? You have saved 3 rounds of activities at the receiving end. And mind you, the examples which I am giving are important operational examples. Ultimately, therefore, it is important to realize, whether you agree with my examples or not, that an analytical evaluation will help you to select a preferred course of action. An analytical evaluation will help you to realize, is it necessary to engage the other person in a combat, or is it simpler to ignore him and let him hang himself? A lot of people have a tendency to say, let me settle it, and I know a lot of people have the tendency to say, let it be, how does it matter? Now, which is better time management? It is a question of what gives a larger sense of satisfaction. Therefore, you will notice that in each case, when it comes to things like analytical evaluation, one's personal temperament and one's own given context is a great input to the exercise of choices. And therefore, the word organizational evaluation is like an umbrella phrase, covers all shades of meaning, and which we are currently trying to unscramble. Then there is the operative evaluation. This measures efficiency by comparative analysis between materials and resources used, activities carried out and the results achieved. In other words, is it more sensible to set up prefabricated low cost housing or create houses out of natural material and get a longer life? Yes, it is true. Construction of natural material do have a longer life. There is nothing to prove that cementing a building has given the cement like qualities to a building, nor does it establish that it goes on for centuries. Of course, these are nice slogans to float around, and it does things to the sales. What it does to the reality is another issue altogether. Therefore, there is an operative evaluation, very important in business discussions, business decisions. Then there is an evaluation of results. This includes quantitative as well as qualitative analysis of research results, retribution factors and probabilities of adoption. After you have generated a solution, and the situation may be one which is amenable to that solution, and that is the solution, a very important marketing principle arises. Are people interested in buying it? Well, might we say, why will people not be interested in buying a solution which affects their life positively? I have seen situations where people are not interested in buying a solution which has the potential of affecting their life positively, for two reasons. First, their basic interests are elsewhere, therefore, it does not really matter. This is an incidental component of their life. The second is, they do not consider it all that undesirable either. How does it matter? Therefore, you will notice that, like everything else, evaluation is a very complex process. It is not just an assessment, it is not just grading, it is not just ranking. There are sound behavioral underpinnings of evaluation process. There are very discrete categories of evaluation, all of which may not be equally useful or even relevant. So, when it comes to organization, your ability to evaluate an organization depends very much on what is it that you are evaluating in an organization. Are you undertaking job evaluation, in which case it is one ball game? Are you undertaking task evaluation? Are you undertaking an evaluation of the work design? Are you undertaking an evaluation of the competencies of the people? Are you undertaking an evaluation of the marketing activity, the manufacturing activity, the supply chain management, the financial soundness? What is it that you are trying to evaluate? And after you have evaluated all of them or some of them, or in fact, the truth is at times none of them, do you still need an overall organizational evaluation? And if you need an overall organizational evaluation, what do you do with it? Does anybody have any use of that overall evaluation? Technically, many things are right. Technically, everyone knows that everyone will die. No two ways about it. Technically, everyone knows that there is an average lifespan of every ethnic group which can be calculated with statistical precision. Technically, everyone knows that when you leave this world, you carry nothing with yourself, not even your passbook. And no customer relations executive of any multinational customer savvy bank ever can reach out to you and tell you what your bank balance is. All these are known, but does it ever affect the behavior of people? Everyone behaves as if he is eternal. Just look at the contradiction of this rational animal. Therefore, if these are the truths of life and these are the truths of profession and these are the truths of organization, one might as well ask, to what purpose evaluation? Well, the answer is very simple. Evaluation, like anything else, is as useful as you make it. I, by temperament, want evaluation at each step. I take a session, I want to know how have I done. I put on an apparel, I want to know whether it suits me. I write a text, I pass it on to a friend. How have I written? Even though I may know that nobody else is going to read it save myself. You know, it's like that family photograph. We constantly keeps taking pictures. Nobody wants to look at it save ourselves. I can't talk of anybody else's family because of the obvious sensitivity is involved, but my household is full of albums which date back at least 70 years. Some of which are so old that the photographs are turning yellow. And I can recall seeing a lot of photographs where I don't recall or recognize anyone in the group. Somebody, my grandmother or even my mother, may have thought that photograph to be very useful. Those photographs are preserved, but nobody ever has asked for it, and they are all preserved. Even your photographs of younger years, the only one who has ever been interested in my photographs when I was 4 years old and 10 years old and 15 years old and was 20 years old is my wife, and she finds it very funny. So, I find it very awkward to show it to her. Now, the long and short of it is a very simple message. Why should evaluation be any different from any other human act? If keeping family albums is such a silly thing, forgive my saying so, though no irreverence is ever intended, nobody has given up creating albums. When I was in Milan, when I was in Srinagar, when I was in Timbuktu, who is interested when you were in Timbuktu and you took a boat ride? The truth is, both of you were quarreling before you got into the boat. You smiled when the picture was taken, and both of you were quarreling when you came out of the boat. So be it. Ultimately, evaluation is to be used purposively. Therefore, the operational recommendation which is to be taken on board, choose what you want to evaluate, choose when you want to evaluate, choose how you want to evaluate, and most of all, where you will use that evaluation. Don't collect an album, and you will find that in a lot of things, evaluation, whereas theoretically we all agreed it is a important feedback, it must be continuously undertaken, blah blah blah, goes on endlessly. It must be purposive evaluation. I still have to walk you through evaluation of results, which includes quantitative as well as qualitative analysis. Traditional evaluation, which is ad hoc groups, courses and seminars being used through word of mouth. Yeah, he is a good teacher. Have you ever evaluated him? No. Do you know the index on which to evaluate him? No. Why is he a good teacher? Oh, everyone thinks he is a good teacher. Oh, he speaks very well. You know, this is what I call traditional evaluation. Then there is personal evaluation. This is a much talked of topic in management. Personal evaluation. This covers evaluation of the performance of professional, administrative and technical human resources in organizations. Most organizations attempt to evaluate their personnel, though a lot of them don't even look at it while taking decisions on the personnel. In fact, if I can use a wisecrack, and you don't have to take that very seriously all the time, evaluation is used to justify a decision which you have already taken on a person. Now, that is what is called a daft definition. It is very rarely that you find all decisions following this, but there are a lot of organizations who do that too. So, ultimately all evaluations are a factor of the assessment process. There are elements of assessment, and it is an organizational context in which this is done. I will come back to more of this a little later.